This is a free flow through the guards. It's a preliminary stage of Spiegelfechten or mirror fencing, which is a kind of shadow boxing with the sword. Now the same exercise a little faster. If you take a closer look, you'll see strikes developing by changing between the guards. Once again, try to identify the different guards. They're very important. We've already shown you basic striking information in the General Basics section. Now we'd like to show you how the important strikes, the diagonal ones, are carried out. They're not carried through, but end in a position called hanger. The point literally hanging to the target represents a threat to the opponent. Here we see a right Oberhau, or stroke from above, being carried out. All strokes of this kind end in a hanger position. You can also recognize a further long sword principle here. All strokes are carried out with passing footwork, meaning, for instance, that a right Oberhau is completed with a step forward with the right foot. In this scene, you can clearly see what happens when a stroke is not stopped but pulled through. Now we see a left Oberhau, which once again ends in a hanger position. The right Unterhau, or stroke from below. The final position in this case is an upper hanger position. And now the left Unterhau, which ends in a right hand upper hanger position. The next exercise comes from a fencing book written by Joachim Meyer. It can be done on your own or together with a partner as a target. It consists of 4 individual combinations which can be combined with one another. The first part begins with a right Oberhau, followed by a left and a right Unterhau, and completed by a left Oberhau. Then the 4 cuts are shown in a fluid exercise form. The first part is made up of a right Oberhau, a left and a right Unterhau, and finally a left Oberhau. Now an attack on an opening on the lower left-hand side of the opponent, followed by a right upper opening, a left upper opening, and finally a lower right-hand opening. Now a left Oberhau, followed by a right and left Unterhau, ending up with a right Oberhau. The final combination consists of a left Unterhau, a right and left Oberhau, and is completed with a right Unterhau. Then the 4 cuts are shown in a fluid exercise form. The ability to carry out these exercises properly is an important prerequisite for being able to do other exercises dealt with in other chapters. Just like basic strokes, the basic thrusts done with a longsword are divided up into the Oberstich and Unterstich, meaning upper and lower thrusts. A combination of the right and left Oberstich. The person carrying out the exercise begins with the upper hanger position and thrusts with his sword to the front. The body and legs follow in a fluid fashion. Even though a simple step is used, thrusts can also be combined with other footwork. An Unterstich, as the name suggests, is carried out from a lower hanger position. Just like in the case of the Oberstich, the movement is begun with the sword and the body follows. The 4 thrusts can be practiced in the same kind of combination as the strokes. One begins with the right Oberstich, then the left and right Unterstich, and finally the left Oberstich. The other combinations are done in the same order as the exercises for strokes. The Zornhau, or strike of wrath, is a diagonal Oberhau, or stroke from above, which ends in a hanger position. In this case, a right Zornhau is used to attack an opponent using a vom Tag auf der Schulter position. Here it's important to retain his line and prevent his opponent from countering. The Zornhau is used with a double step. In this case, we demonstrate the same technique from the left-hand side against an opponent with a Tag auf der Schulter on the left-hand side. Should an opponent attack using a right Oberhau, the partner defending moves to the side with a double step and uses a Zornhau against his opponent's blade. He immediately thrusts down towards his opponent's face. It's especially important that the Zornhau is stopped in a position that threatens the face of the opponent. Should an attack take place using a left Oberhau, then the defense should be a mirror image of the first case. The drill shown here is excellent practice for a Zornhau from left or right and also offers an amount of reaction training. Both partners begin in a vom Tag über den Kopf position. The Krummfau or crooked strike is a diagonal downward stroke from one's right side to an opponent's right side. A thumb grip is used for a diagonal or spiral-shaped blow to the front, which ends in the Schrankhut or barrier guard position. In this case, the Krummfau is used to attack an opponent using a left ox primary guard. The strike is directed against the opponent's hands. Now we see the same technique used against an opponent in a right ox primary guard position. Notice here that the short edge or kurzer Schneide is used. This detailed film shot clearly shows the thumb grip used in the final stage of the stroke. Naturally, the Krummfau can also be utilized to counter an Oberhau. Here, a certain amount of feeling for the correct distance is especially important. The footwork is directed diagonally to the rear in order to remain outside the opponent's reach. The Krummfau is an extremely versatile stroke. It's also useful to counter an Unterhau. Here we see a Krummfau used against the flat of an opponent's sword. It knocks the opponent's weapon downwards so that an attack using the short or back edge of the blade is made possible. The movements in this special example lead from the guard vom Tag via the Schrankhut to the Flug or plough position. This is the same technique used on the other side. The opposing attacker uses the long edge of the blade. The use of the Krummfau to the flat against a right Unterhau is also a possibility. This practice drill helps to achieve a fluid use of the Krummfau stroke on both sides. The partner attacks 3 times, alternating right and left with an Oberhau or an Unterhau. The defender then retaliates with the Krummfau in each case. Those who own good protective armor can also use this practice drill to try the Krummfau against his opponent's hands. Now the whole thing again in slow motion. The Schwächhau or thwart stroke is a horizontal stroke that's used in combination with the thumb grip in order to counter and protect against an attack from above. The final position of the Schwächhau is the ox primary guard position. In this scene, we see a Schwächhau used from the right against an opponent standing in a vom Tag over the head position. The attacker begins with a vom Tag on the shoulder and winds the blade into the ox position with the aid of the thumb along the blade, while moving slightly to the side or forward at the same time. In doing so, he used the short or back edge to hit the left-hand side of his opponent's head. In the final position, the hilt of the sword serves to protect the attacker's head. In the case of a Schwächhau used from the left against a vom Tag over the head position, the long edge of the blade makes contact. Carrying out the Schwerschau requires the hilt of the sword to be held high in front of one's head in order to protect one's hands from contact with the opponent's blade. Should an opponent attack using a straight Oberhau to the head, then a Schwerschau from the right can be used. Ideally, the opponent is struck at the same time. It's often more advantageous to advance directly towards your opponent without trying to move away to the side. In this case, the ability to hit simultaneously is made more difficult, but the position of your blade offers more protection. It's also easier to adopt further techniques. This film scene illustrates what happens when the hands are held too low when using a Schwerschau. Both hands and the head can be hit. Should the person under attack be in a left von Tag on the shoulder position, then it's better to use a Schwerschau from the left, but the principle remains the same. In this drill, a student can learn how to use high and low Schwerschau strokes in a fluid way from left and right. The defender in this case plays the target and only parries the opponent's strokes with the strong of his sword. The Schielhau, or squinting strike, is a diagonal or vertical Oberhau which utilizes the thumb grip to achieve a better line than a normal Oberhau. The Schielhau ends in a kind of stretched-out Flug primary guard. In this case, we see a Schielhau being used against a right Flug primary guard. Both of the opponents have their left feet forward. The aggressor attacks with a diagonal Oberhau using a thumb grip and manages to hit his opponent's head on the left side with the short or back edge. At the same time, the line is closed so that the opponent's sword is pushed away from the danger zone. In this way, a possible thrust can be avoided. The final position much resembles a stretched-out left Flug. Now we have the same technique from the left to attack an opponent using a left Flug primary guard. This is carried out with the long or front edge, and once again a thumb grip is employed. This version doesn't apparently come up in the training manuals, but we decided to include the technique employed from both sides anyway. The Schielhau can be also used against a right diagonal Oberhau. If the person being attacked is in a von Tag on the shoulder position, a Schielhau from the right can land on the left side of the opponent's head. Here we have the left side variation, which ends up in a kind of stretched right Flug position. Should the initial position be vom Tag over the head, the stroke is carried out in a vertical way towards the shoulder, from which the attack was started. So a right Oberhau hits the right shoulder of the opponent and the other way around. The sword must be guided towards the side once again so that the line remains closed. Should the opponent be in a Langort or long point position, a Schielhau stroke can be launched against the blade without taking a step, and then slid along it towards the chest or face of the opponent. The Scheitelhau, or scalp cut, is a straight stroke from above which can be used to attack the head of the opponent using its increased reach. The Scheitelhau, or scalp cut, is effective against the Alba or Fool, which is one of the 4 primary guards in the Lichtenauer longsword system. It doesn't matter which side the stroke is carried out on. The important thing is to keep one's hands held high in order to gain maximum reach. The use of a Scheitelhau against a cut to the legs tends to support the Überlaufen or overrunning principle. This principle maintains that strokes towards the upper part of the body possess a longer reach than cuts directed at the lower parts of the body. For this reason, low blows don't need to be directly countered. Once a little distance has been achieved, a fresh initiative may be launched by counter-striking simultaneously. The Überlaufen drill. This trains defensive tactics against high and low attacks. The aggressor either attacks with a diagonal Oberhau towards the head or a Mittelhau or middle stroke directed towards the legs. The defender has to take the decision about which technique is the right one. This drill can naturally be staged from the left, or attacks may be carried out from both sides. The term versetzen has several meanings. In the manuals interpreted in this work, it's used to describe the action of countering the guards with the master cuts. The basic techniques have already been shown in the section on the master cuts. Here you see a drill where player 1 shifts through the guards. Every now and then he stops in one guard. This is the cue for player 2 to attack with the appropriate master cut. Ansetzen, or attacking with the point, is used when an opponent raises his sword to begin a stroke and a thrust is carried out by the other partner. The attacker is in a right fluke position and is thus exposing his left side. When the opponent draws back his weapon to launch a blow, the movement is followed by a thrust towards the upper left opening. Should the opponent draw back his sword to carry out an Unterhau, then a thrust towards the lower left-hand opening is carried out. In this case, the attacker is in a left fluke position. Should his opponent begin to prepare a left Oberhau stroke, then the attacker launches a thrust in the direction of the upper right-hand target area. Should the attacker move towards staging a left Unterhau, then a thrust is directed towards the lower right-hand area.